When you listen to the Roy or you listen to Kinlan, you listen to Brema, it's all statistics, you know. But let me try and give you the, should I say, the human side of the statistics. We spend on education as the second largest item in the budget. Defense is the most one. Do you know that when the news came out, I think about a week ago, that they want to cut the funding for independent schools? Why? Because all of a sudden, now we are being told all schools are supposed to be the same, you know. So the supposedly elite schools have to cut down. So when I read this, I said, something strange might be going on, right? Now we always say, when in doubt, what do? Go check up the statistics. So I looked up the Ministry of Education, MOE, Education Digest for 2013. Oh, lo and behold, you know, secondary school developmental expenditure in the last 14 years, in real terms, decreased by 82%. In practically every country's history, education is so important that most countries' education expenditure, and here I'm talking about operating expenditure for university students, most countries, that figure will increase every year at a percentage that is even higher than GDP growth. Do you know in the last 27 years, relative to GDP growth, our per capita spending on university education declined by, listen to this, 464%. And I say that again, just in case you missed it. In the last 27 years, university spending per university student relative to GDP growth decreased by 464%. I said, was it Kinlan who say, want to search for your petition, just Google Tan Kinlan National Service Right. So for me, this one very easy. You just Google Leong Sze Hian, 464%. The article will come out so. I think I better use the slides now, although I'm not used to it. So here we go. Okay. This is Marua's submission for budget 2014. Oh, by the way, you know Roy did practically everything. The 10-part article, the 10-part infographics, the videos, the charts. He's the coordinator for today's forum. He pays the money for the rental. This guy is phenomenal. How about a round of applause for Roy? I did about 10% of the work. Did I touch something out of the slide here? You see second slide? Okay. Marua's submission for this year's budget focuses on 3 areas. Mainly, education, healthcare, and retirement. Why are you laughing, Bella?
Now you're trying to follow the slides.
Now, for budget 2013, right, like everybody else, Aware, Marua, everybody was talking about, oh, we need to improve social mobility, we need to increase social safety nets, right? You hear this so often nowadays, like every day you open the newspaper, you see the same thing, no? So let's look at the numbers and see how the rhetoric is being translated into the statistics. Okay? So this is the never-ending call, expanding further social protection. But look at what Roy showed you. We spend the least. So we have a lot to expand. And I'm wondering what the next slide is all about. For education, total subsidies in the last financial year. Now just again you see, how come Mr. Tan Kinlan one is 11 point something and this one is 10 point something. Kinlan is the budget for the current financial year. What I'm showing you is the actual finalized figure for the last reported financial year. 10.7 billion. How much fees do we collect from all the students? You know, university fees, secondary school fees. 1.2 billion. But it's estimated that the poor parents amongst us, we pay out-of-pocket expenses about 1.6 billion. Like I said, if you are in like the Nordic countries, you hardly have to pay any out-of-pocket expenses for education. Of course, you pay more taxes, but more or less compared to Singapore. We shall talk a bit more about that later. So, government should increase expenditure by 2 billion. 2 billion is peanuts, you know why? Last year, the reported budget surplus was 3.9 billion. So you say, okay lah, 3.9 billion, I spend another 2 billion in education, I still have a 1.9 billion budget surplus. But that's not all. According to the Department of Statistics, using IMF fiscal reporting standards, our surplus for the last financial year was a whopping $36.1 billion. IMF fiscal reporting standards means there are some things that you cannot report as expenditure, such as when you transfer to endowment funds, no country reports it as an expenditure. Only our uniquely Singapore fiscal reporting standards will report the transfer to endowment funds as an expenditure. So what this does, it gives you the impression that we have a lower surplus every year, because this one actually cannot minus one. Then you have things like land sales. There are a lot of revenue that we do not count in our budget reporting. But use IMF standards, you have to count that. And of course, we're also asking for full subsidies for childcare. So, bottom line, increase government expenditure on education, move the public expenditure as a percentage of GDP. Oh, I want to acknowledge my idol has arrived, Mr. Leslie Chu. You know Leslie Chu, the cartoonist, the only Singaporean who has ever been arrested. For what? Never mind. I know he's the only Singaporean to be arrested for something that nobody has been arrested for. But anyway, they let you out already. Okay. Welcome, Leslie. Let's look at healthcare next. Don't look at how much money we are spending, don't look at premiums, you know. All these are what we call, you know, picking at the pieces. Just look at in total, how much money the government spends and how much we spend. 31.7% government subsidies. Out of pocket, 61.3%. The bottom line, roughly, every dollar of healthcare spending in Singapore, government spends 1/3 and you spend 2/3. Like I said, in the Nordic countries, there will hardly be any out-of-pocket expenditure for healthcare. You know, when we look at percentages, statistics, they're quite meaningless. But if you do financial counseling, like many of my volunteers have done for the last 10 years or so, practically every day you meet people who come and say, oh, you know, Mr. Leong, I'm homeless because I have to sell my house to pay for healthcare. Every day, you get stories of people coming, Mr. Leong, my son doesn't go for treatment anymore because he's afraid if we don't pay how. So let's look at what all this means for lower income people. You know, MediShield cover is the lowest medical cover in Singapore. It's not even private integrated shield. We have about 92.7% of the population of the residents who are insured under MediShield. This statistic was disclosed in Parliament. 2,400 MediShield claims in 1 year. The co-payment was more than $10,000. You know, MediShield is class C and B2. supposed to be the most subsidized, the cheapest ward that MediShield is supposed to cover. And it's supposed to be poor, and that's why you only buy the cheapest plan MediShield. And yet, in 1 year, 2,400 lower income Singaporeans have to cough up more than $10,000 in co-payment. Co-payment is your deductible in the co-insurance scheme. And that is the problem with our healthcare system, right? That the poor get hit the worst. Hey Roy, how come you didn't mention this one? You know why? The problem with Roy is this, you know. Every time he sends me the stuff he writes, I don't have to sleep the whole night, like, very long, a lot of charts. But let me make a confession. Of all the research Roy has done, the best one is this one. And that is, if you take the simple benchmark measure that is used in the world today, how to measure poverty? What is poverty like? There's one very simple measure. You just take the median income and you count how many workers earn less than the median income. Wow, Singapore is the highest of the high income countries. It's 26%. That means about a quarter of the people who workers actually earn less than half the median income. Scary, right? I estimate if you include the self-employed, the part-time workers, you are looking at about 600,000 people who earn less than 1,500, 400,000 people who earn less than 1,200, and more than 200,000 people earn less than $1,000. We are truly a first world country. Look at the numbers. How much is our MediSave expenditure? You know, in 1 year, how much we contribute to MediSave? I say nobody knows, no. But never mind, I keep this one to the end now, because this one is a bit chim, a bit complicated. Okay, so leave to the end. But the bottom line is this, you know. The 3 M's actually is quite useless. And of course, Professor Paul Kambaya is here, right? So during the break or after that, you ask him how useless the 3M is. But let me just give you one startling aspect of the 3M that shows you how useless it is. That this is this one. Look at this. MediShield is only paying 2.1% of Singapore's total healthcare expenditure. Find me another national health insurance scheme in the world that pays only 2.1% of total expenditure. We are not even, well. Somebody asked in Parliament, how much is the MediShield claims to premium ratio? The answer came in the 10 years or so, 2001 to 2010, there was a surplus of 850 million. You know, most countries' national healthcare budgets and national health insurance schemes are operating in deficit, you know. You can read about it every day in the newspapers. We are probably the only country in the world where national health insurance scheme make money. Yeah, 50 million. And never even count the interest on this 850 million. This is just the pure claims to expense, what you call it, premiums ratio. We have 60 billion in the MediSave accounts. And how much is withdrawn a year to pay for direct medical expenses? 700 over million. So all this money, very little is being used. Now, when very little is being used from the government, from MediSave, from MediShield, what is the bottom line? It comes out from your pocket in cold, hard cash. Because it is not 3M, it's cash. You add up everything. It's only 1.3% of your total MediSave balance is being used every year. We have 3 billion in the MediFund, And yet only about 100 million is being used a year. Why are you keeping all this money in endowment funds and using, if I may call, peanuts every year, and then you end up paying a lot of nuts? That essentially is the problem of our healthcare system. And of course, you need to increase nurses' wages, you must have more wages, you must have more nursing homes, this and even. Roy already talked about this, but since it's in the Marula budget submission, I shall repeat. We get a miserable 2.5% on the bulk of our CPF. Temasek gets 16% from inception. GIC, excuse me, if you are very angry, you can show your anger at somebody else. Okay? Look at the numbers. As Roy said, all these are implicit tax on Singaporeans. The problem is not just we are not getting a lot of benefits back. The problem is we contribute about the same in terms of, say, social security compared to the Nordic countries. But you fast forward to when we retire, we get so little back. And the reason is very simple. They are growing theirs at whatever rate of return they are getting on their pension funds, let's say 6%. We are getting as low as a miserable 2.5%. And that's why we find that at the end of the day, only an estimated 1 in 8 Singaporeans when they reach 55 can meet the minimum sum, which is currently 148,000, entirely with cash from their CPF. In any country in the world, if you have a national pension scheme where only 1 out of 8 can meet so-called the minimum, you have a big problem. Now I can be my normal self. I analyzed the wages statistics yesterday because I know I'm speaking today. So I then must pretend to do some research and not Roy take all the glory, right? In the last 13 years or so, the real median wage growth in Singapore for the 8 basic categories of workers. You know, Singapore has 8 categories of workers. Cleaners, sales and service workers, managers, professionals, and so on. 8 categories. In the last 13 years or so, the real median wage growth for 5 out of the 8 categories was negative. Now for 13 years, after adjust for inflation, no pay increase. Cannot find any country in the world, in the history of the world, that has such a dismal statistic. We are truly number 1. I say 5 out of 8. Oh, it's not so bad, right? 3 out of the 8 have a positive real increase in wages per annum. Of the 3, 2 of them was less than 0.5% per annum. The highest one, only 0.78% per annum. Let me give you some example. If you are earning $1,000 13 years ago, if your real wage growth, the highest one, was 0.78, that means after 13 years, your real pay has only increased by $100. $10 a year. It is not just the wages that is an issue. The problem is jobs. In 2000, if you look at the employment change numbers, employment change is like jobs created now. Every year, how many more jobs are added to total employment? In 2000, the percentage of jobs created that were going to Singaporeans was 45%. You know, in 2000, every 100 jobs they create, 45 went to Singaporeans. Then you look at the data from 2000 to 2006, I think, because this is a fairly old Ministry of Manpower report. And gradually, the jobs that went to Singaporeans start to decline. By my estimate, come to today, which is about 13 years later, if we make an adjustment for the huge influx of new citizens and new permanent residents that we have had in recent years, my estimation, and it's just my estimation, why? Because they don't break down the data anymore into PRs and Singaporeans. I have no way of figuring out. I can only estimate. I estimate that now it may be as low as only 10% more. Now you know why. There are so many people who say, oh, I can't get a job, you know. Look, the problem in Singapore is this. Lots of unemployment, lots of underemployment, lots of long-term unemployed. Long-term means give up already, you know. A lot of economically inactive people who are economically inactive not because they want to, because they cannot get a decent paying job. You know, the propaganda today is quite unique, you know. Every week got job fair, you know. Then every time you see the same type of jobs, only thing they go around to a different place. But they never tell you what is the pay for the jobs. So the last one, I think a few days ago, there was another job fair. So they quoted 4 types of workers. I think it was sales and service workers, welders, machinists, and retail assistants and customer service officers. So I used the MOM benchmarking wages tool. Check what is the pay of all these people. Basic pay for retail assistants is, I think, $1,074, about $1,050. Right? Then what about customer service officers? Cannot find insufficient data. What about machinists? I think cannot find so. Well, that's quite good now. I think about 1,600. So the question you got to ask is, the last vacancies report say, hey, so many jobs Singaporeans don't want. More than 60,000 jobs Singaporeans don't want. Not only that, a lot of jobs more than 6 months still cannot find people to work. All this is pure propaganda. Let me give you a classic example of propaganda. Since you're on the budget, you might notice that the newspaper has started a new series called, with a dollar sign, The Budget and Me. Then they show you an example of how lower income Singaporeans have benefit for the budget. So the first one is a classic one. It says that because of workfare, this man was able to buy a $1,600 computer for his son, so can go to poly, right? So he says that, wow, there are about $200 increase in workfare. So I'm a bit curious, I go and check. Hello, it's not $200 a year. It's not $200 a month. It's, to be exact, it's $177 in cash in workfare for this man. So $177 cash help him to buy a $1,600 computer. If this is the best kind of propaganda that we can come up with, okay, we have a problem. You notice, every bus stop, everywhere, spending lots of money telling you, no, we are doing this for you, we are doing that for you. Might just save all this money and just do it, right? I'm going to end by telling you that not only from a cash flow perspective, and of course on a relative basis, do Singaporeans pay the highest taxes in the world, get the least benefits back, and this is manifested by the fact that if you look at the cash flows, the government does not spend a single cent on healthcare, it does not spend a single cent on HDB, it does not spend a single cent on CPF. And that is the mother of all our problems. Whether you are fighting for human rights, or women's rights, or gay rights, or labor rights, or civil and political rights, unless this fundamental issue of our fiscal system changes, I think we've got to keep doing this, you know, until God knows when. Thank you.